from San Jose, California, and brought to you by Think Tank Learning. Welcome to Meet the Experts. This is a forum in which we pick the brains of experts and professionals from various industries. We give students inspiration by showing them the academic journeys that they can imitate as they prepare to become experts themselves.
Welcome to Meet the Experts. Today we're going to talk about how the federal government helps to promote tech innovation. There's a lot of talent that comes in and out of universities every year, but then the academic research path is slow to commercialize these ideas and these methods and technologies, which is why the federal government has now created methods through which scientists and engineers can create their own companies and to commercialize their amazing groundbreaking idea faster than usual. Our expert today is Dr. Christie Canaria. She is a member of the Small Business Innovation Research Development Center, otherwise known as the SBIR Center, at the National Cancer Institute. She provides programmatic support to small businesses applying to the SBIR and STTR programs and has area expertise in biological imaging, biosensors, and nanotechnology. Dr. Canaria is a central figure in planning special center initiatives, conducting outreach activities, and coordinating communications. In 2014, she played a leading role in the launch of Innovation Corps, or I-Corps, a program designed to support training to help small businesses overcome key obstacles along the path to innovation and commercialization. In 2013, Dr. Canaria was awarded the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship and began science policy work in Washington, D.C. Previously, she managed an optical microscopy facility at the Department of Energy's Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory as an imaging expert and neurobiologist. She also was coordinator and imaging expert at the Caltech Biological Imaging Center, where she developed advanced multidimensional and time-lapse confocal imaging techniques. Dr. Canaria also worked in industry, expanding and optimizing surface chemistry and imaging processes for genome sequencing technologies. Dr. Canaria earned her PhD in chemistry from the California Institute of Technology and her bachelor's in science in chemistry from the University of California, San Diego. Dr. Canaria, welcome to Meet the Experts.
Thank you for having me.
So to start, you've had an opportunity, you work in DC, you work in science policy. You've had an opportunity to speak before the President's Council on Science and Technology. Could you tell us what you talked about and why?
Yeah, thanks for that. So I did recently have the opportunity to speak in front of what we call PCAST, the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. What I was doing there was helping to educate the council on different programs, specifically the I-Corps program that you mentioned earlier, this Innovation Corps program. This is a program that was started in 2011 by the National Science Foundation, the NSF, to help entrepreneurs be better versed in moving their technologies from the bench to the market. And so this program was originally envisioned by NSF to be applied to research scientists in the lab to help them understand where their research and work could be commercialized. And then in 2014, the NIH, the National Institutes of Health, took the I-Corps program, and I was part of this team, and we translated that program to another agency at the NIH. And because of the success of the program and how it's been very influential and positive for aspiring entrepreneurs, the PCAST Council was very interested to learn more. So we talked to them about the program.
Okay, all right. So then can you define for us what is meant by the phrase Small Business Innovation Research?
Sure, SBIR, Small Business Innovation Research. This is a program that was started in the US about, well, a few decades ago in the 1980s. And it was meant to sort of help spur and innovate and fund research into commercial space. And so this is basically a program that the US government uses to seed research and development and help promote that into technologies that are serving the US public. At the National Institutes of Health, at the NIH, the SBIR programs are frequently used to help move biotechnology from bench to market. And the program itself provides funding to small businesses to help them with those activities.
So is there a particular group of engineers and scientists that the federal government is trying to help through SBIR?
So the people that the SBIR programs address are those scientists and engineers in sort of the STEM fields, or really anyone who has technology that they're developing that fits one of the missions for the U.S. Government. So the way the program works is all agencies who have a large extramural budget set aside a portion of their budgets to help fund commercialization, and it's through these SBIR programs. So really it's anyone who has an idea that fits the mission of the federal agencies. They can apply for funding from the federal government to help move that technology from bench to market.
Okay, well, at Think Tank Learning, we do have some very talented students, right, who, especially the computer science ones, they end up writing their own, software and try to commercialize it even before they graduate from high school. So is there a limitation on who? Do you have to have like an academic affiliation in order to apply to the SBIR? Do you need to come from, the nonprofit public sector? Can you give us some insight into that?
Sure. So especially for students who are interested in becoming entrepreneurs, it's important to note that you don't need a PhD to apply for these programs, but there are some eligibility criteria. And one of them includes, if you're going into the SBIR program, that you have a for-profit business set up in the US, as an example. It's one of the eligibility criteria. There are a couple of other registrations you need, but really if you have an idea for a technology or an application or a service that you could provide that would meet one of the needs for the federal government, you could apply for SBIR funding. Wow.
Okay. I'm sure many of our students will be excited to hear that. Okay. All right. So if you get a flood of application from high school students, you can blame us for that. So, okay. All right. So,
well, Dave, let me just say that one of the goals for the SBIR program is not to just fund promising technology, but it's also to help foster the participation of women, minorities, and other underrepresented groups in entrepreneurship, because the impact of these people in the U.S. economy has a great potential. And so we welcome strong applications by entrepreneurs in these spaces.
And so in terms of the categories you just described, is there a certain quota that prioritizes minorities and women in STEM who apply to SBIR programs?
There are no quotas, as it were, for participation, but it is important that we ensure and educate people that these programs do serve women and minorities, and that these individuals are welcome to participate under the SBIR programs. That's one of our main missions. And one of my roles in the office is to conduct outreach and help educate citizens and small businesses to understand that these resources are available for them. I would say that one of the biggest barriers we have, that entrepreneurs have, and that we as the federal government and SBIR have, is an increasing awareness for the program to eligible and worthy applicants. And so one of the things we definitely want to do is make sure people know about the program.
Wow, okay, and we're glad that we can help you in that mission. So, so then what are some advantages of getting funding for your startup through SBIR versus the usual route of venture capitalists, that is?
That's a great question. So one of the more traditional or maybe popular ways that people think about funding small businesses include reaching out to angel investors or friends and family, or venture capitalists, like you said. Each one of those types of investors typically takes, part ownership in return for their investment, basically diluting ownership of the company from the small business. one of the biggest positives for the SBIR program is that these dollars, this money, is non-dilutive. This is a grant that we provide. It's not a loan. You don't have to pay it back. Another positive to the SBIR program is that the intellectual property that the small business is developing, that IP stays with the small business. The U.S. government doesn't take any ownership of it. So really, it's a wonderful source for non-dilutive funding, as we say, and the IP stays with the company. And many investors, private investors, who know about the SBIR programs really consider having secured one to be a measure of risk aversion. So basically, if the federal government has said this company is worthy of SBIR dollars, that technology must have some merit in it. And so a lot of our awardees who receive grants from the SBIR programs say that getting one from the NIH helps to elevate them when they are out looking for additional private funds.
Wow, okay. So what would you say are the current challenges and future frontiers of science funding for the purposes of speeding up and promoting innovation?
I would say that one of the obstacles that we're going to see moving forward has to do with our rate of innovation. And what I mean by that is technology is accelerating at such a rate right now that we have the ability to build technologies for almost endless uses. And one of the challenges, I think, for entrepreneurs and small businesses will be to find the right fit for their technology. Because any given technology can serve an almost infinite number of uses. Finding that best, what we call product market fit, will be key for small businesses in innovation and taking those technologies to market. And that's exactly what the I-Corps program that I've been working on helps to address for entrepreneurs. By giving scientists and engineers who maybe don't have business experience, by teaching them some entrepreneurial skills, how to think about their technologies in ways where they can identify what the value of their technology is and for whom it might serve a purpose. Being able to identify where those technologies can fit can really help a small business decide which is the right path for commercializing their technology.
Wow, okay. Well, if you're just joining us now, we are interviewing Dr. Christie Canaria. She is a program director at the National Cancer Institute. She works to help small businesses get funding from the federal government to speed up their innovation and commercialization potential. And so let's switch gears a bit and talk a bit about your educational history. Most of our audience are high school students, their parents and college students. And so we always want to give them examples of educational journeys that have led to success. And so could you describe your educational journey starting from high school?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So if we fast forward to today, I would say that I am a product of many of these STEM programs that have been available here in the U.S., STEM being science, technology, engineering, and math. When I was in high school, I started becoming interested in chemistry. I had a great junior year chemistry teacher who told me about a program that the National Science Foundation had. It was called the Young Scholars Program. This program doesn't exist in its current form today, but there are similar ones available. And so if anyone is interested in getting exposure to science early on, this is one path for you. The Young Scholars Program, the way it was set up was it took high school students and paired them with professors at local universities and basically gave them an opportunity to intern in a research lab for an academic school year. And so this was a program that I did my junior year of high school. Afterwards, I continued and did some more work with them my senior year of high school. And when it came time to apply for college, it was therefore a pretty good fit to just apply to the university I had been working at, and that was UC San Diego. That was a great mentor I had there. His name is Michael Saylor. He's still a professor there. But But then going through college, I took advantage of another program that the NIH had called the Minority Biomedical Research Support Program. And this program basically helped fund me for the research I was doing in the lab as an undergraduate. And that program was really instrumental in helping me continue staying engaged with science. And when it came time for graduating from UC San Diego, I stopped and said, okay, the next logical step is graduate school. And so I applied for graduate school. But like many of the viewers here, you may decide you don't know exactly what you want to do right after college. And that was certainly the place I was in. I didn't know how I would do in graduate school. I applied for a school and I got into one that was all the way out in Illinois. And for me emotionally, doing this jump from being a commuter student who lived with my parents in San Diego, I don't know if many of the viewers here have the same experience living at home with your parents during college, but for me the idea of moving away for graduate school, I wasn't quite mentally or emotionally ready for that. So what I did was I stopped. My mentor had a great eye, and he knew that I wasn't quite ready for graduate school. And he said, Christy, we're in San Diego. This is the biotech boom age. Why don't you try working for a little bit in biotech? And so that's what I did. I applied for a job at a biotech company in San Diego. I did the thing that you should never do, and I took the first salary they offered. But I worked there for 2 years. It was a startup company. I was employee 79. It was a wonderful experience. And by the end of those 2 years, I had a greater appreciation for science and how I could help move science forward. What I learned there was that everyone who I respected and admired had a PhD. And that's when I said, oh, I now know why I want to get a PhD. This is what I want to do. So then I kind of reassessed, reapplied for graduate school, and then I got into the Caltech Institute of Technology, California Institute of Technology in Pasadena. And so I moved up to the LA area, went to graduate school there, and then always with this thought that I'm going to get back into biotech somehow. By the time I graduated from with my PhD, the space of PhDs in the market was pretty high, and one thing you had to do to be competitive with a PhD was also have some postdoc experience. So then I went ahead and did some postdoc experience, thinking that I would use this to then get back into biotech. And then that didn't happen. I applied for work up in the Bay Area and found a research position in a government lab. And at the time, I didn't realize that there was more to just being a scientist in one academia or two industry. Government labs also hire scientists. And so that was interesting to me. And so I took that position. I worked there for a few years. But then being in a government lab, I recognized that there's more to being a scientist than being at the bench. Being in a government lab, I learned that there was a lot that goes into to policy, science policy, to influence the type of research our nation moves forward. And so after working at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, I looked into programs that would help support me in science policy, and I found the AAAS Science Technology Policy Fellowship Program. And if any of you out there is interested in other ways to use your science degree, science policy is a wonderful, wonderful program. So I moved then from California all the way out to the East Coast, here to the Washington, D.C. area. And through the policy program, I ended up at my current office, the National Cancer Institute's SBIR Development Center. And since my fellowship ended, I have stayed on in the program, and I'm now program director there. So that's the sort of long story of how I got here.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, so it's great that somebody with your socioeconomic background, your educational background, has attained the success that you have, right? And the fact that you're in a position to continue that legacy, right, of ensuring that minorities and I guess any type of minority population, not necessarily ethnic minorities, you know what I'm saying, gets a fair chance at shining and making their mark. So, and definitely America and the world certainly benefits from that. Okay, so my next question for you is then, you haven't been like you once a very young woman in STEM, now a mother and an established woman in STEM. What advice do you have for young women who want to be like you one day?
Advice I would give to young women and men and young people in general who are starting out, I would encourage you to stay open. Stay open to the opportunities that come your way. For me, I would not have ever predicted the career path that I have been on. Actually, and when I started in high school with that Young Scholars Program, I remember my application. I told them I wanted to work in cancer. Happens to be where I am now. And I told them I wanted to do chemical engineering, but I had no idea what that meant. I had no idea what it meant to be a chemical engineer. And when they placed me in the Young Scholars Program with a researcher, with a professor, that professor was in inorganic chemistry. He didn't do any cancer research. He certainly didn't do any chemical engineering in that lab. But it was a great experience, and so I just sort of took it and rolled with it. When I came to that transition point between my bachelor's and what to do next, recognizing that I was in San Diego at a time when biotech companies were all around, and being able to take advantage of the opportunities to try something new. That was really pivotal for me in developing my career, because the people that I met at that biotech company, more than 10 years ago now, have all flourished and grown. The company itself has flourished and grown, and the experiences there have really helped me inform the way that I think about science and the way I think about being a professional. And so what I would tell people is to just be open to recognizing opportunity when it comes, because it could lead you in some really fabulous directions.
Definitely. Okay. And so tell me about, or tell us about what kind of research you did while you were a grad student and a postdoc. You had mentioned, I think, neuroscience or neurobiology. And of course, in your bio, I mentioned a lot of microscopy and nanotech. So can you just give a taste of, I guess, what you did?
Sure, and I think that if you were to look at my resume or my CV, you might wonder, how did all of these things come together? And really, I think in the end, it's a reflection again of having been able to take advantage of different opportunities as they come. So actually, I started off as a chemist. I did surface chemistry, and as an undergraduate, my research was with silicon. I was taking silicon chips, the kind you find in your computer. I was modifying them to make biosensors, chemical sensors actually, at the time. And, it got me exposed to using different types of equipment. But really it was chemistry. I was looking at these interactions happening at surfaces. And then when I went into work in the biotech space, we were making biosensors in this company. We were basically making DNA array sensors, and being able to recognize that the interface of chemistry and biology really could lead to something applicable in a device. That's when I started to kind of mix in the biology there. And then when I went to graduate school, I actually joined a biology lab, but as a chemistry major. And so I know that there I was a bit of an odd duck. But at Caltech, it's actually a very small school, so it wasn't so bad. We had a lot of interaction between different divisions. While I was there, I was at the Biological Imaging Center, and so I was building biosensors using my chemistry know-how, but then incorporating microscopy to sort of take pictures of the things I was trying to measure. So some of them were cells. I was trying to measure cells, and some of it was I was doing fluorescent assays with DNA. I was trying to take pictures of those. But then in my postdoc, I decided I'm going to switch from using microscopy to look at devices to actually looking at cells and systems that were alive. And that's where I really started mixing in some of my developmental biology into my research repertoire, as it were. And then when I moved up to Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, I took the techniques that I had developed as a postdoc at Caltech, and I applied them to the systems that we were studying in the research group I was in. And that included watching cells, but not for developmental biology, but for studying Huntington's disease. And so that's where the neurobiology started mixing in. And so if you were to start the very beginning and wonder how did we go from silicon wafers to brain cells, you might not see how that all moves together. But today you can see, there are definitely places where you'll see, brain cells grown on silicon chips. And so these interfaces do come together. But that, for me, that was the trajectory I took.
Yeah, I'm glad you shared that, because oftentimes due to the typical high school curriculum, right, each subject is very individualized, right? And would you say that having been in different fields, right, was actually advantageous for innovation and discovery, right? A chemist who became a biologist, right?
Absolutely, and I think being able to recognize how principles in one system apply to another, I think is very helpful. And what does that mean? So I talk about STEM, but another concept people may hear about is STEAM: science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. My favorite example of thinking about STEAM is when you consider music. Most people enjoy music, but if you've ever played a musical instrument, and this is true for me, I played the violin and the piano growing up. If you stop to think about music, you may recognize that music is actually a physical manifestation of math. And I don't know if anyone thinks about that. Notes have different frequencies. If you play a string instrument, like the guitar or the violin or the piano, you'll recognize that there are harmonics that you can access with your instrument. What do harmonics mean in chemistry? For me, I was using different devices that measure vibrational frequencies for chemical bonds. And being able to recognize things like vibrations and frequencies in music also helped me understand those concepts in chemistry. And so being able to understand what works in chemistry and in biology and marry those two and find the connections there, I think also helps to just inspire people to think about how the rest of our world is connected. So.
Definitely. Okay, and I'd like to share that when I was, I first met Dr. Canaria when, she was the, microscopy expert coordinator at Lawrence Berkeley Lab, and I was a grad student and then a postdoctoral fellow there. And little known fact, she's actually quite a dancer, right? What kind of dancing, however much you want to share, do you do?
Sure. Let me start at a little further back. And this, I think, is good for maybe our high school students to hear as well. When I was in high school, I was painfully shy. Painfully awkward. And when I went to college, I saw that as an opportunity to sort of reinvent myself. And for any of you out there who doesn't feel comfortable in her or his own skin, know that, every day actually is an opportunity for change. But for me, especially high school to college was a great opportunity. So one of the first things I did was I signed up for the ballroom dance team. UCSD had a ballroom dance team. I tried out. I got in. I was certainly not the best thing on the floor, but it really gave me an opportunity to try something new, to reinvent myself as a new person who had this new skill, which was ballroom dancing. And I loved it. I had a really good time, learning to follow, to lead, how to count music in my head and put that on the dance floor. and I would even compete as a on a formation team, but also as a coupled pair. But then this is where it ended. After college, I went to grad school, and I didn't have a dance partner anymore, and I was looking for other ways to continue movement and dance. And I found Middle Eastern dance this way. I had a few girlfriends who had started exploring Middle Eastern styles of dance, belly dance, if you've heard that term before. And one of the fun things about that dance form was I didn't need a partner. I could dance all by myself if I wanted to. And that was actually a very empowering feeling, being able to, to learn a new dance form, a new vocabulary of dance moves, and do it all by myself. And that was something that I started doing in graduate school, and it helped, again, provide me a way to reinvent myself in graduate school. And it was something that I took with me later on, and the lessons I learned there have really served me well moving forward as well.
Okay, so it sounds like all of your experiences, academic and I guess in the arts and your hobbies, have come together to serve you well as program director, right, of this I-Corps, which works with engineers, bioengineers, biologists, and computer scientists from all walks of life, right? So, all right, well, thank you you very much for being with us. That's all the questions that I have for you, and now we will turn over to Alistair for listener questions.
Hello, everybody. I am your moderator today, and I'll be reading off some questions that some of our viewers have been asking. So the first one for Dr. Canaria, what are some great successes that were actually funded by SBIR that most of us don't know about?
That's a great question, and I love this one because the U.S. government has been funding companies through SBIR since the 80s. One of the best ones that NIH has funded, some of you may recognize in Sonicare toothbrushes. So if any of you has one of those electric toothbrushes, the prototype for developing that was actually funded through NIH SBIR dollars. Another great example from a different agency is Qualcomm. Maybe you've heard of that big company. So they're a huge powerhouse in terms of technology, wireless technologies today. But very early on, they were also funded by the SBIR programs. So a lot of the technologies that we see out here today were funded, a ways back in early stages using Small Business Innovation Research funding.
Wow, interesting. Okay, the next question is from Stephen. He says, I am interested in studying in science, and my question is it worthwhile to take some classes on business? In your role, you advise scientists to pursue business, so what is your take on that?
I would say if you're an undergraduate, especially, college is a great time to explore all of your interests. It certainly was true for me. I would say today it's not required that anyone have an MBA to go into business. Certainly you see a lot of people who don't have one going into business and then just finding the people they need. But if you wanted to study business, absolutely go ahead and learn something about that. I think college is a great time to start building your knowledge arsenal, as it were. So absolutely.
Okay, great. And we have one more question. This one is from Jen. She's currently a sophomore, and she says, my parents are extremely strict on how I spend my time on academics. What are some things your parents did, especially coming from an Asian American family, that helped guide you to where you are today?
I'm going to assume that Jen is maybe a sophomore in high school. I guess, although it wouldn't really matter if Jen were in high school or college. Some of the things my parents were very strict about. My parents were very strict about not dating, so that kept me very focused in school. They were also very strict about not going out, but they were very open to letting me explore other things like extracurricular activities. And so music was something that they let me pursue, as was any other, idea that I had, at home. Most of, I will say, part of me being so shy was because I didn't do much outside of school and music. Yeah. But there is life after high school, and once you get out there into the world, you will discover that there are a lot of different avenues you can pursue. And I still think of myself as still having a lot of time to explore many of these avenues, and so I'm sure that once you move out into college and beyond, you'll be able to take the time you need to discover those areas and facets of yourself as well. I wanted to reach out to the viewership and let them know if anyone wants to connect with me. Find me on LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn already, get on there. And when you do connect with me, let me know how you found me. Otherwise, I don't connect back. So just let me know that you found me through this episode.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Canaria.